Chapter 1237, The Mysterious Spirit of Sacrifice. The language of the big chinchilla is incomprehensible to humans. Zhang Yi once asked Liu Karen to try to make a translation machine for it. However, for this special species, there is not enough information, and it is difficult to understand its words. It can only be slowly analyzed and understood through its calls in daily life. So Zhang Yi was a little curious about the frog's words. "How did you know?" The frog said with a smile. "In fact, due to the frog's appearance, it always looks like it is laughing, quack. I said that music can reach people's hearts. I can understand what it just said." "Oh, then what did it say?" Zhang Yi sat cross-legged, with a curious look on his face. The frog said, "Sacrifice, ritual, spirit." Zhang Yi frowned and thought for a moment, and suddenly realized it. "You mean the purple crystals?" The frog spread his hands. "I don't know either, but through the music, I feel its meaning." The big chinchilla also started to call, and the call sounded familiar to Zhang Yi. It seems that it often calls like that after returning from the Qinling underground. Zhang Yi didn't care much at the time, and thought it was just hungry. Unexpectedly, it was actually reminding Zhang Yi what that thing was. Zhang Yi put on his slippers and stood up, putting his hands on the shoulders of the big chinchilla. "Big chinchilla, do you know how to use that thing?" The big chinchilla looked at Zhang Yi and faced Zhang Yi's sincere eyes. It blinked twice and then tilted its head. "Ah." Zhang Yi. Language still couldn't communicate. The big chinchilla didn't know what he was talking about at all. Zhang Yi was quite speechless, so he had to say to the frog, "Frog, in the future, please play with our big chinchilla more. If you hear it say anything again, tell me, okay?"
Quack.
"Okay, my friend," the frog said with a smile. Zhang Yi thought about it, took out 2 centipedes from the different space, handed one to the big chinchilla, and the other to the frog. The big chinchilla was very happy, because the centipede was twice as big as it. But it held the long body of the centipede with both hands, opened its mouth cutely, and showed a mouthful of fangs. Crack. The tough body of the centipede was bitten open directly, and green blood splashed everywhere. The big chinchilla bit off the flesh of the centipede as easily as eating a cream puff. Zhang Yi thought of everything the big chinchilla had done in the underground world, and thought to himself, "What on earth is this guy? It looks like the claws and teeth are very sharp and can easily chisel the underground rock layer. But the combat power is not strong." The frog looked at Zhang Yi with a strange face. "Why did you give me this?" Zhang Yi raised his head and looked at the frog, and smiled. "A little gift brought back for you. The supernatural power index is at least above 9,000 points. After absorbing it, it will make you stronger." The frog spread his hands and shook his head and said, "Oh, my friend, I am not interested in becoming stronger." Zhang Yi said, "Some things you can do without, but you can't do without. It's never a bad thing to become stronger, and the meat of this insect tastes very good." The frog thought for a while. "Okay, you have some truth. Thank you for your gift." The frog accepted the captain-level centipede that Zhang Yi gave him. Zhang Yi didn't know the strength of the frog. Frog is a pacifist, and he didn't do much to deal with the cockroach tide before. Most of the time, he likes to lie in the mud at the bottom of the lake and take a nap. Although Zhang Yi has not known Frog for a long time, he likes this guy very much. Such a carefree person is always easy to infect others around him, and also makes Zhang Yi feel happy. In the next few days, the busiest person is Liu Karen. She has to deal with everything Zhang Yi brought back from the underground of Qinling Mountains. The yuan ore is easy to say. You only need to process the ore to extract pure yuan stone. However, this new energy material requires time to study how to use it. In addition, it is to study the purple crystal, that is, the use of the spirit of sacrifice. At this time, Zhang Yi always helps by the side to avoid accidents. After a few days of research, Liu Karen finally found a way to release the energy in it and guided it out. It is a very complex energy body because it contains the power of emotion. The energy of a ritual spirit the size of an arm, guided by complex instruments and equipment, actually consumed dozens of huge energy storage containers. Brother, the energy in this crystal is very similar to the source of God and the source spirit, but not exactly the same. Lu Kuoran came to this conclusion after experimental analysis. Zhang Yi touched his chin. So, it's a good thing? Lu Kuoran nodded. As an energy body, there should be no negative elements in it. After confirming that there was no danger, Zhang Yi began to try to absorb this energy. He placed his arm on the receiver. In just a moment, an indescribable mysterious, the feeling instantly enveloped Zhang Yi. The mighty and turbulent energy poured into his body, but the feeling was different from the previous absorption of the alien origin. When absorbing that power, he suddenly felt that the time and space around him had stopped. Zhang Yi slowly turned his head to look around, and everything around him stopped moving. The clock on the table, the movements of Lu Karen's hands, and even the dust flying in the air. Zhang Yi tilted his head, not knowing what was happening. However, the next moment, a noisy sound rang in his world. Everything he saw in front of him turned into light and shadow and was pulled back at a high speed. In a flash, he entered a pure white world. A string of emotions, like a film, crisscrossed in this pure white world. Zhang Yi's head felt a swollen pain, and he seemed to have many more memories, but those memories were blurred. Sometimes he was happy, and sometimes he was sad. It seemed that in a short moment, he had experienced 10,000 years. It was indescribable, and it was hard to say whether it was sadness or joy. All kinds of emotions were mixed together, making people at a loss. I don't know how long it took for this emotion to slowly disappear. When Zhang Yi opened his eyes again, he saw countless white furry balls of light suddenly appearing in the vast white space. He stood there, not moving rashly, and felt that all this was like a dream. Zhang Yi said in his heart, "Maybe I have received some special energy body, which made me hallucinate like I was poisoned." Although he had never eaten giant Shaoqing, Zhang Yi believed that his mind must have been affected and fell into a special state. I don't know how long it took for everything in front of Zhang Yi to disappear one after another. He returned to the real world. The pure and strange energy poured into his body, not surging and hot, but made him feel that his body had undergone inexplicable changes. Powerful, the supernatural power index increased by at least 2,000 points. But these are not what Zhang Yi cares about most. Chapter 1238. Star Island Changes. I don't know why, after experiencing that mysterious experience, Zhang Yi's heart became much calmer. There was an indescribable change in his body, as if the essence of life was sublimated. But even after returning to the real world, the low whispers in his ears did not disappear. It was as if someone was lying next to his ear, whispering to him some secrets. However, the voice was too vague, and Zhang Yi couldn't hear a word clearly. He reached out and touched his forehead, thinking that it was just a sequelae after absorbing a lot of energy. Seeing this, Lu Kuoran hurried over to support Zhang Yi. "Brother, are you okay? This symptom is normal. I have had it before, but it will disappear soon. Nothing will happen," Zhang Yi said with confidence. "Sequelae, right? Then it's okay." Zhang Yi absorbed the energy of the entire sacrificial spirit, but he was temporarily a little tired. He said to Lu Kuoran, "You can handle the next thing yourself. I'll go back and rest first." Zhang Yi declined Lu Kuoran's offer to send him back. He is not weak now, but full of energy. It's just that his brain is confused because he has received too much information for a while, so he needs to rest. Lu Karen had to watch Zhang Yi leave. After Zhang Yi disappeared from her sight, she lowered her head and frowned, looking at her palm with thin calluses. During the experiment, in order to ensure safety, she also absorbed a little bit of the energy of the spirit of sacrifice. She also knew that feeling. And after absorbing it, there will be a very wonderful change. It is not a simple thing that allows aliens to increase their strength. It is a more complex and mysterious existence. But now, Lu Karen and Zhang Yi have not discovered its deeper secrets. After Zhang Yi returned to the room and lay on the bed, he slowly closed his eyes, trying to make his mental state better. But after closing his eyes, the hazy whispers in his ears did not disappear. It seemed that someone was whispering in his ear. Zhang Yi opened his eyes and looked around the room. There was no one else. He sat on the edge of the bed and looked out the window. It was already dark at this time, and the East China Sea was far to the southeast. Under the dark night, the sound of the waves seemed to come one after another. Zhang Yi rubbed the middle of his nose vigorously. I think I'm probably sick. He simply ignored the noise in his ears, took off his clothes, got into bed, and wrapped himself in the quilt. As long as he got some sleep, everything would be fine. Early the next morning, Zhang Yi was awakened by the sound of knocking on the door. After waking up, his mental state was indeed much better, and the whispers in his ears disappeared. He felt full of energy, as if his whole person had been sublimated. Zhang Yi put on his clothes and walked over to open the door. He saw Yang Xinxin standing at the door with a serious face, and said to Zhang Yi, "Brother Zhang Yi, something big happened at Sieve." Zhang Yi was silent for a moment, then said, "Xingdao's?" Yang Xinxin nodded. Zhang Yi's eyes suddenly became sharp. Is it coming after all? Last night, Zhang Yi fell asleep and entangled with the demon whispering in his ears. The area of 100 kilometers around Qingdao has long been a restricted area. There are patrol ships from the East China Sea region and the Columbia Navy Ocean Fleet near the sea. This mysterious place hides too many secrets. Although it is dangerous, everyone has gained real benefits from it. Danger and opportunity coexist. Despite the danger, no one is willing to give up this treasure house. But just as the ship was patrolling as usual, suddenly, the crew found something wrong. Qingdao, which has been shrouded in thick fog, began to slowly spread. From a distance of 100 kilometers away, and in the middle of the night, all this was not obvious, and even seemed a little slow. But when they discovered all this, the speed of the fog spreading quickly became faster. The soldiers on the ship immediately reported the news here to the headquarters and quickly fled the area where the fog spread. There is an abnormality in Qingdao, and the fog on the island is spreading rapidly towards the surrounding seas. The current spreading speed is about 40 nautical miles per hour. No, 50, 60, 70 nautical miles, it's coming. No. The last voice received by the East China Sea Region Navy headquarters was this. Afterwards, the two patrol ships were engulfed by the fog that continued to spread around them, and all contact was lost. Li Guangxiao, the supreme commander of the East China Sea region, received the notice and immediately came to the Combat Command Center and summoned the senior military leaders overnight. Xuanwu, Qinglong, Zhuke, and the new replacement Baihu all came. Looking at the satellite image on the big screen showing the spread of the fog on Qingdao, and the instruments analyzing the signals sent back by the patrol fleet over and over again, the expressions on everyone's faces were extremely serious. Fortunately, in the end, the fog only spread about 500 nautical miles around and stopped spreading further. The existence of that place is always a hidden danger, Li Guangxiao said with a serious face. Xuanwu took off the virtual headset on his head, chewing electronic gum in his mouth, and said, "If the monster under the abyss of Qingdao appears, I am afraid that few people in the entire Huaxiu country can stop it. It once fought with the black armored monster. And now, the East China Sea region has given the black armored monster an official title, Gatekeeper of the Underworld." When the Gatekeeper just appeared, his powerful strength shocked all major forces. Xuanwu couldn't even block his casual attack and was swept away. If it weren't for his thick skin and flesh, Xuanwu would be seriously injured. It is conceivable that if there are more monsters under there, I am afraid that the whole world will have no power to stop it. Qinglong's face is a little pale. He doesn't have much life left now. The hidden injuries in his body can only be suppressed by taking medicine, but he can't live more than 5 years. He said, "No matter what it is, as long as it is a carbon-based creature, it will not be afraid of the god of love. At least now, it is afraid of us." Li Guangxiao nodded, and several high-ranking military officials around him also expressed their approval. The god of love is the most powerful weapon in human history. What they have in their hands is a powerful weapon that can completely wipe out Qingdao. This makes them feel a little relieved. At this time, Zhuke also spoke. If Qingdao Fog Valley is the same place as Qinling in Shengjing District, Then, this may be a good opportunity for us. After returning from Shengjing, Zhuge felt tremendous pressure. Although she is the pride of the East China Sea district and an alien with the potential of Ypsilon. But if she does not become a real Ypsilon, she will only be a second-rate character in front of Zhang Yi, Li Changgong, and others. And what does she lack compared to those people? Maybe it's just a chance to enter the secret realm and get the treasure. Chapter 1239, The Mysterious World. Qingdao, since the discovery of the Source of God, the news naturally could not be concealed from all parties, and it has long been the focus of major forces in the world. However, only the two major forces in the surrounding area are truly qualified to compete: the East China Sea region of Huashu Country and the Ocean Fleet of Colombia. As for Zhang Yi, due to the last words of the Dragon King, he has been paying attention to everything on Qingdao. So this morning, Yang Xinxin informed Zhang Yi of the changes in Qingdao that he had observed. Zhang Yi felt a little heavy in his heart, and he rubbed his temples hard. Bad guy, this is really bad. Even now that he has an ability index of 18,000 points, he is as weak as a toddler when facing the powerful existence in the secret realm. If one day, the gatekeeper of the underworld in black armor, or the white dragon son whose sacrificial spirit he stole by chance, comes to the world, he may find Zhang Yi to settle accounts. The sense of crisis once again enveloped Zhang Yi's heart, making him very uneasy. Seeing Zhang Yi's melancholy, Yang Xinxin whispered, "Brother, do you want to go?" "Go? Forget it." Zhang Yi shook his head. He would never go to Qingdao before he had enough strength. If he was really marked by the gatekeeper of the underworld, he might be found directly if he went there again. Let the East China Sea region and Colombia's ocean fleet solve it. Although Zhang Yi said this, he subconsciously clenched his fists behind his back. Yang Xinxin blinked, thought for a while, and said to Zhang Yi, "Brother, you once said that people are always full of fear of unknown things. Just like fear of darkness. But when humans learn to use fire, they are no longer afraid of darkness. Shadows will magnify the fear in people's hearts. So, maybe everything is not as dangerous as you think. Isn't it?" Zhang Yi looked at Yang Xinxin and smiled. That's indeed the truth. He took a deep breath and exhaled out the window. That's why I've been trying to figure out the truth of this world. Yang Xinxin said, "Recently, I've been studying ancient literature records." Shengjing shared their library with us, and with the 2 volumes of the biography of King Geezer I got from Paji Gasang, I now have some ideas. Zhang Yi was a little excited. Really? Tell me quickly, I want to see if I can find some clues from history. Zhang Yi brought Yang Xinxin to the living room. In recent days, everyone else has been busy absorbing the essence of alien beasts to improve their strength. So Zhang Yi ate the food stored in the alien space. He poured 2 cups of coffee, one directly handed to Yang Xinxin, and then the 2 sat on the sofa. Zhang Yi looked at Yang Xinxin, waiting for her recent research results. Yang Xinxin started by saying, "Why humans appeared in this world has always been a huge mystery. According to the theory of evolution, species gradually evolve in order to adapt to the environment. Then in the process from apes to humans, there must be some intermediate states. But we haven't found such intermediate creatures. Even Darwin, who proposed the theory of evolution, said that humans do not conform to the theory of evolution. Instead, they grew wildly at an explosive rate and evolved into a developed civilization. Therefore, many scientists believe that the emergence of humans must have been influenced by external forces." Zhang Yi said, "This statement is very interesting. You continue." He didn't say much. He was not an expert in this area, so naturally he would not disturb Yang Xinxin. Yang Xinxin said, "There are myths in every civilization of mankind. In ancient times they worshipped gods. It was the gods who gave them life, fire, food, and taught them the skills to survive." So, Yang Xinxin stared at Zhang Yi, her eyes surging like a tide. Could those underground civilizations be the gods who led us humans to rise in ancient times? The first thing that came to Zhang Yi's mind was the white dragon under the Qinling mountains. The human head and snake body are indeed the appearance of the gods in the ancient mythological era. Fuxi and Nuwa, the two ancestors of mankind, are of this type. The Huaxia people have worshipped dragons since ancient times. The image of the dragon is said to have evolved from the snake. There is no totem worship without reason. Perhaps the ancients regarded the snake people as gods, so they portrayed their images as totems. This speculation is very interesting. But there are 2 points I don't understand. Zhang Yi said, first, why do gods hide underground? Second, the snowy plateau is suspected to have been ruled by an underground civilization, but that civilization was called the demonic civilization. They appeared in later generations and used the people of the snowy plateau as slaves and food. This is more like a devil, not a god leading the rise of the human race. Yang Xinxin took a sip of coffee and explained slowly. First, there is no record of it in historical materials. But in myths and legends, there are talks about fairyland and heavenly palace. Since humans entered space and landed on the moon, the idea of heavenly palace has been eliminated. The fairyland is not in the sky. Then why can't it be underground? Her eyes were full of brilliance. The surface of the planet is a paradise for us. The universe, the sea, and the underground are all evil lands for us. But those places may be the paradise of the race of gods. If we compare this planet to a ping-pong ball, we are only moving on the surface. But there is obviously a wider space and more abundant resources inside the sphere. For example, the Yuan mine was found underground, wasn't it? Zhang Yi nodded his head. He had an average level of education, but he thought what Yang Xinxin said made sense. Yang Xinxin continued, as for the second point, God is just a kind of imagination and name for powerful beings. They don't necessarily have good intentions towards humans. Maybe they just treat humans as slaves, toys, and objects of observation. Since there are good gods, why can't there be evil gods? There are good and bad people, not to mention those advanced creatures. Zhang Yi leaned back on the sofa, feeling quite emotional. What you said is indeed very reasonable. But if they have such powerful abilities, why didn't they show up in the past? But now they are showing up one after another when mankind is facing the end of the world. Yang Xinxin was silent for a while. She suddenly said in an uncertain tone, perhaps they are also waiting for a certain opportunity. For example, now. All of this is just speculation, a hypothesis deduced by Yang Xinxin through various historical materials. No one can be sure of its rationality, but now they can only speculate as a way to understand the current world. Chapter 1240. Prepare for the crisis. The Creator exists because the structure of this world is not accidental. Yang Jining. As he came into contact with more and more underground secrets, Zhang Yi's awe of this world became stronger and stronger. If those mysterious worlds underground and the unimaginably powerful creatures are really the gods and demons of the ancient times, then is this era really the legendary mass extinction of creatures? Will humans die out? Zhang Yi doesn't care much about the life and death of people who have nothing to do with him. He just wants himself and his relatives and friends to live a safe and stable life. The mysterious fog of Qingdao spread, and this incident aroused his vigilance. Zhang Yi rubbed his eyebrows. We have to figure out some things. And we all have to keep getting stronger to avoid any possible danger. Yang Xinxin nodded, but she also said, Brother, at least you don't have to worry too much now. From all the current signs, even those powerful races in the underground world are subject to some kind of constraints. Or they are afraid of the existence of something and cannot appear in our world. Also, although the development time of human beings is short in the history of biology, they have a powerful civilization. Especially weapons. The love-death god in the hands of the country is enough to wipe out any carbon-based creatures. What's more, she smiled slightly, stretched out her arm around Zhang Yi's shoulders, and gave him confidence. Based on our current situation, whether it is the abyss under the fog valley of Qingdao or the snake people under the Qinling mountains, the civilization power they control will not exceed us by much. If you have to say it, the power of the demon country, like the snowy plateau, they would even be defeated by human heroes more than 2,000 years ago. This means that their civilization power may not be as good as today's humans. Zhang Yi looked at Yang Xinxin in surprise. Is this possible? According to common sense, isn't it true that the longer the development time, the higher the technological level of the civilization? Yang Xinxin smiled and shook her head. That may not be the case. Before the invention of the steam engine, productivity in human history was seriously insufficient, and it was extremely difficult to fill one's stomach. Science and technology are growing explosively, not gradually, she said lightly, so the longer a civilization exists, the more developed it is. This idea itself may not be correct. Zhang Yi nodded. It does make sense. He looked out the window, took a deep breath, and said, no matter what, making yourself stronger is a hard truth. After pondering for a moment, he made a decision. When we have finished dealing with things here and the centipede breeding farm is built, we will go to the Deng family. Ask them for genetic technology. I will build an alien army in Tianhai City, Zhang Yi said with a firm look. At this time, he is more eager for power than before. Even if it is just a little help, he will grasp it. After all, with the resources he has at this time, it is far from enough to use them on his family. In the following time, Zhang Yi asked Yang Xinxin to continue to observe the movements of Qingdao Fog Valley through Tianhai City's satellite authority. On the other hand, he contacted Xuanwu in the East China Sea region to inquire about the situation there. Of course, Xuanwu could not tell Zhang Yi everything. But through his few words, Zhang Yi could judge the severity of the situation. Xuanwu said to Zhang Yi, the fog covered the area of 500 nautical miles around Qingdao. But it stopped spreading. That kind of fog contains toxins that are extremely threatening to organisms, so a lot of fish in the surrounding waters have died. Zhang Yi thought about it, smiled, and asked, do you have any way to deal with it? Or do you want to go over and explore? Xuanwu laughed. That place is too dangerous. The strength of the Hades gatekeeper can easily crush me. I don't dare to go there at all. But that place is not only watched by us, but also by the Columbia Navy. Both sides have at least 50 love deaths aimed at it. Once anything unusual happens, when we confirm that it will pose a huge threat to mankind, we will directly wipe out the entire Star Island. Zhang Yi felt much more relaxed. The 50 love deaths today are not the first-generation models from a century ago. They can completely wipe out the Star Island from the map of the ocean. Even if the Hades gatekeeper is strong, it is impossible to withstand its power. Then I'm relieved. By the way, do you need my help? Zhang Yi put one hand in his pocket and asked deliberately. Xuanwu's eyes flickered on the other side. Okay, when I need help, I will ask you to help. But now we try to maintain the status quo and don't break the balance casually. Haha, is that so? Well, that's good. Just tell me when you need my help. We are old friends. I will go there. After speaking, Zhang Yi hung up the phone. He and Xuanwu both had ambiguous smiles on their lips. Zhang Yi was testing them, and Xuanwu was also acting. Because the East China Sea region had decided to send another powerful team of aliens to explore the fog. Of course, Zhang Yi couldn't know about this. After all, they had suffered a great loss at Zhang Yi's hands. But Zhang Yi was not interested in this. He would not easily put himself in a dangerous situation. The risk of eating the first crab is always great. Moreover, he has almost plundered all the benefits on Qingdao. If he wants to get something else, he can only go deep underground, which is too dangerous. Zhang Yi still pays attention to the affairs of Qingdao every day. He did not stop training himself. Whether it is physical training, learning fighting skills, and swordsmanship, he insists on spending a lot of time practicing every day. Nowadays, his ability index has reached 18,000 points, and he is one of the top people in the entire Huashu kingdom. However, after absorbing the spirit of sacrifice, a strange side effect has also appeared. When he fell asleep, he often heard the kind of whispering in his ears. It was like someone was in his ear, talking to him in a tone that he could just hear the sound but couldn't hear the words clearly. At first, Zhang Yi thought that he had absorbed the spirit of sacrifice, which affected his mental state, so he didn't care too much. But slowly, this phenomenon became the norm. He would encounter this kind of situation every 2 or 3 days. Zhang Yi asked Zhou Kuo to examine him, but even Zhou Ke did not find any abnormality in his nerves. According to the test, Zhang Yi's physical condition is now outrageous, and his physical data is completely comparable to that of a personal trainee who has been practicing for 2.5 years. Zhang Yi couldn't figure out what was wrong with him, but fortunately it would not affect Zhang Yi's health for the time being, so Zhang Yi planned to put it aside for the time being to see if it would slowly disappear over time. Chapter 1241. All members strengthened. Under Zhang Yi's urging, everyone in the family is also working hard to improve. However, now that everyone's ability index has reached the elite team member and captain level, the gap in talent has become prominent. Although Zhang Yi has a large number of alien beast origins in his hands. However, the efficiency of absorption by different people shows a huge gap. Among all people, Liang Yu's talent is not surprisingly high. Her basic panel value is too high, and the conversion rate of absorbing the alien beast origin is also very high. In fact, after returning from Qinling, her ability index reached 9,700 points. This is the result after absorbing the origin of 2 captain-level alien beasts and Chenlong Armor. Considering her close combat reinforcement attribute, if she is allowed to get close, it is possible to kill the Epsilon-level alien unexpectedly. Even when Zhang Yi faced Liang Yu, he did not dare to completely relax his guard, because every day when the two of them practiced in the stadium, Zhang Yi would be beaten up by her. Later, after Zhang Yi's careful training, her strength slowly reached the threshold of 9,800 points, so the speed of absorbing the essence of alien beasts gradually slowed down. Although Zhang Yi could use the essence of alien beasts in his hand to force her combat power to rise in a short time. But this method is too cost-effective, and too much is as bad as too little. Zhang Yi is a frugal person, so he did not make such a plan. In addition, Huahua's ability index has also reached 9,999 points, and it is only one step away from a complete breakthrough. After taking the Source of God, it has opened the genetic restrictions. In theory, it is the most talented in the shelter, except Zhang Yi. It only needs to fight continuously and stimulate its potential. Sooner or later, it will step into the threshold of Epsilon. In addition to the two of them, other partners in the shelter have also been greatly improved. Uncle Yu's ability index has crossed the threshold of the deputy captain level and reached a height of 8,100 points. He is not satisfied with this data because Zhang Yi spent more materials on him. 3 captain-level alien beast essences can barely allow him to reach this level. Going forward, it will be even more difficult to improve. Uncle Yu sighed to Zhang Yi and said, "My limit may be here. It turns out that hard work can make people stronger. But to reach the top in a certain field, talent is still the key." Zhang Yi smiled and comforted him. "Don't worry. Fatty didn't achieve success overnight. Maybe you have to digest these powers slowly. I'm just too anxious to make you stronger." Hearing this, Fatty Sue, who was not far away, was not happy. "Boss, you can talk, but don't be so sarcastic to me all the time." As he spoke, he lowered his head to play the game from time to time. Zhang Yi and Uncle Yu leaned over to take a look. "Oh, you're still online with others." Uncle Yu laughed. Zhang Yi and Uncle Yu looked at each other, with a bit of amusement in their eyes. "With whom?" the two asked knowingly. Fatty Sue blushed that. "I have a friend. A fart friend." At this time he was still hiding. Who else could play games with him except Liang Yang? Zhang Yi asked curiously, "How are you two getting along now? Didn't you break up? Why are you still in touch?" Fatty Sue jumped up and said, "What's the breakup? I told you I'm not dating her. I think she's a nice person. It's nice to get along with her as a friend." Zhang Yi sneered, "That's right. As long as it doesn't get to the last step, you can hypnotize yourself in your mind and think that she is a beautiful girl." Ah. Before Zhang Yi finished speaking, Fatty Sue immediately covered his ears with his hands and ran away. Sure enough, he used the phrase, "Escape is shameful but useful," to the extreme. Anyway, it's just self-paralysis and escape from reality. Zhang Yi was too lazy to pay attention to him. He handled his emotional affairs himself. However, due to the stimulation of Liang Yang, Fatty Sue has indeed changed a little now. On the surface, he said that he didn't like little boys, but he was much more energetic when training. Now his ability index has reached 8,000 points with the help of Zhang Yi's cramming. Who is it for? Zhang Yi didn't say it, and everyone knew it. Fat otakus are such complicated creatures. In addition to them, Yang Xinxin's ability index has also reached 9,000 points. She doesn't seem to be keen on becoming stronger. The owner of rule-based abilities relies on the brain rather than simple abilities. She prefers to be the woman behind Zhang Yi, coordinating everything for him and making plans. In comparison, Zhou Kuo is more concerned about improving her strength. She is a doctor and Zhang Yi's physical housekeeper. The stronger she becomes, the more secure Zhang Yi's physical health and safety will be. As an auxiliary ability user, she does not need to increase her experience through fighting. She only needs to improve the accuracy of her abilities through repeated practice of abilities, treatment, or experiments on microscopic organisms. So she did not fall behind and also reached the captain level threshold of 9,000 points. It was under this kind of practice that her ability finally achieved explosive growth. A new ability, flesh transformation. Simply put, she can change the physical fitness of living things by touching them. This gives her a certain degree of lethality. In theory, anyone whose body she touches will be controlled by her will, twisting the flesh and destroying the internal organs. However, as a non-combatant, this means of attack is difficult to be used and can only be used at special moments. However, the ability of flesh transformation shows a powerful effect when helping teammates. She can help Zhang Yi have the most perfect physique. Nowadays, Zhang Yi's physical fitness is comparable to that of a beta-level enhanced alien. This is a huge improvement for Zhang Yi now, although he cannot fight with an Epsilon-level alien in close combat. However, the improvement of basic physical fitness will enhance his endurance and can also cope with many complex environments. For example, if Zhang Yi fights with an alien of the same level and his strength is exhausted at the end, at this time, the superiority of physical fitness is reflected. Whoever can hold on longer will have the last laugh. Relatively speaking, Yang Xia's ability improvement speed is not fast or slow. Her talent limit is not high. She enjoys the same treatment as Zhou Kuo, but she has only reached the level of 8,000 points. However, this little woman is very content with the status quo. For her, the ability index is just a kind of food that makes the food she makes more delicious and can fill Zhang Yi's stomach. What really surprised Zhang Yi was Lu Karen, because her ability index jumped to 9,500 points in one breath. Chapter 1242 Supervisors sent to Qinling. Update. In order to help Zhang Yi study the spirit of sacrifice, Lu Karen inevitably absorbed a part of it. She herself didn't know that this had some subtle effects on her. In addition, Zhang Yi never kept anything to Lu Karen and always treated her as a precious technology tree and cultivated her carefully. As a result, Lu Karen's ability index also soared all the way until it reached 9,500 points. This speed of improvement shocked Zhang Yi, because this shows that Lu Karen's own capacity has changed again, or perhaps it can be said that the upper limit of potential has increased. After reaching the upper limit of the alien, it is like a kettle full of water. No matter how much origin it continues to absorb, there will be no progress, or the progress will be extremely slow. If Zhang Yi hadn't distributed some of the source of God to everyone before, it might not be so easy for them to reach the threshold of 9,000 points now. Lu Karen, on the other hand, was exposed to the more mysterious spirit of sacrifice by accident. Zhang Yi had also considered this, but if Lu Karen, who absorbed a trace of the spirit of sacrifice, had such obvious changes, then what about him? Zhang Yi recalled the strange changes in his body recently and couldn't help but fall into thought. Put aside those. Lu Qian's strength improvement is great news for Zhang Yi. With the help of Uncle Yu and Fatty Sue, she built a huge furnace in the basement. It can quickly smelt the yuan ore and extract the purest yuan material. This thing is similar to coal and somewhat close to metal, but its way of releasing energy is not burning. Fortunately, Shengjing District has done research in advance and provided Zhang Yi with a method of using it. Therefore, Lu Qian will soon be able to extract the energy of the Yuan stone and apply it in the industrial field. She said to Zhang Yi confidently, "Brother, give me 2 months at most, and I can build the upgraded second-generation exoskeleton armor. By then, I will definitely make you more powerful." The little girl blushed and looked at Zhang Yi, as if she had seen him wearing armor and going up and down. Zhang Yi had seen the first generation of armor built by Lu Qian, and only Uncle Yu had worn it. Overall, the appearance is very good. The whole is made of titanium alloy and weighs only about 20 kilograms. However, due to the need to carry compressed fuel and weapons, the whole set weighs more than 60 kilograms. This is obviously not suitable for Zhang Yi at the time. Now, Zhang Yi's body has been transformed by Zhou Ke, and wearing more than 60 kilograms of armor will not be too stressful. But obviously, the lighter, tougher, and more flexible the connection parts are, the better. With Lu Keran's improved strength and the new energy material, he will soon be able to create the second-generation armor. Brother, I will carefully build the best armor for you. If it can be made of the best metal and matched with new weapons and equipment. Wearing such a set of armor can make an ordinary person have the strength comparable to that of a high-level Delta alien. Wearing it on you can make you even more powerful. Zhang Yi's eyes lit up when he heard it. That's naturally great. Men are obsessed with armor. Especially Zhang Yi. Although he is keen on weapons, he likes armor that can cover the whole body more. In this way, the close combat defense problem that he was most worried about was also well solved. Unless he encountered a top master who was good at close combat, such as an alien like Liang Yu. It was difficult for ordinary aliens to break his defense. Even the top combat uniforms in the region could hardly stop the attack of the Epsilon-level aliens. With Lu Keran's current ability, the exoskeleton armor she created is already moving in this direction. Maybe one day, she will be able to create armor comparable to that of the Epsilon-level aliens. Zhang Yi looked at Lu Keran as if he was looking at a huge treasure with endless potential. He was also secretly thinking in his heart that he must find a way to find a source of God for Lu Keran in the future. As for the spirit of the sacrifice, it seems to have the effect of improving potential. I just don't know how effective it is compared with the source of God, and what kind of connection is there between them. In less than a month, Zhang Yi received news from Shengjing. The excavation of the Yuan mine has started again. There was no movement from the mysterious existence in the underground world, so Shengjing sent many worthless miners to try to clean up the abyss area and conduct exploratory excavations. After confirming that there were no accidents, they planned to carry out large-scale mining. And now, with the destruction of the centipede tribe, the progress of mining can be accelerated. The Jiangnan region holds 30% of the resources, and it is necessary to send people to supervise the distribution of the elemental, and send people to work. Zhang Yi thought about it and called Gao Tianwu, who was training at the Chaoyu base. Today, Gao Tianwu's ability index is less than 5,000 points, which is considered a strong man among ordinary people. But if you really want to talk about it, it is difficult to even reach the threshold of entering the investigation team.
But
there is one thing that makes Zhang Yi very optimistic about him. That is, he is young, ambitious, and responsible. Zhang Yi thinks of himself as just an ordinary person, neither good nor bad. But Gao Tianwu was willing to give up some personal interests for the sake of the people in the village, so he can be regarded as a good person. That's right, people always like to employ good people and are willing to trust some good people. But everyone seems unwilling to be a good person, which is a bit ironic. Gao Tianwu went to the Chaoyu base and has always performed very well. Although he is actively getting stronger, he has also developed some of his own men. But he handled Zhang Yi's arrangements very well and did a good job cooperating with Lu Dehai and Chen Jingguan. Zhang Yi decided to give him a chance to be responsible for the project alone. So it was decided that he would take a few brothers to the Qinling mountains to supervise the collection of yuan ore. Zhang Yi asked Gao Tianwu, "Going to Shengjing is not a hard job. It may even be profitable. But this time you'll be far away from home, and you need to build good relations with the local organization. In addition, Blizzard City will also send people there. You are my person, and they won't make things difficult for you there with my name. But after all, You are an outsider, and you may suffer some small losses or be excluded. Zhang Yi said with a smile, if you encounter small troubles, you have to handle them yourself. Don't tell me about trivial matters. I ask you to go so that you can do it yourself, and it's best not to cause trouble for me. Of course, we don't cause trouble, but we are not afraid of trouble. If anyone dares to touch my interests, just tell me. No matter who the other party is, I will make him pay for it. Chapter 1243 Spatial Ability Upgrade. After listening to Zhang Yi's words, Gao Tianwu immediately said, I understand all this. Thank you, Boss Zhang, for giving me this opportunity. I will work hard and will not embarrass you. Zhang Yi said lightly, you are good in everything, but your strength is a little lacking. Have you practiced your gun well recently? Gao Tianwu said hurriedly, I dare not slack off. I am in charge of a team now, and I practice seriously every day. For ordinary people and lower-level aliens, hot weapons are still a great threat. Zhang Yi took out a centipede's essence from the alien space. Although it is not captain level, it is also at the level of 700 to 800. Here is a piece of alien beast's essence. Take it and absorb it and improve your strength as soon as possible. This time, bring 10 aliens from the Chaoyu base. In addition, every month, you can take as many yuanshi as you need. This is for your living and exchange of supplies. I will let the Deng family provide you with medicine so that you can improve your strength as soon as possible. Zhang Yi made a relatively sufficient arrangement for Gao Tianwu and others. It's not that he wants to be too involved, it's just that the current combat power level of Tianhai City is too low. In the 3 major bases, even the strongest leaders have not reached the captain level. With the strength of Gao Tianwu and his brothers, they will be laughed at if they go to Weio Valley. At least they have to become stronger to support Zhang Yi. They don't need to be too strong, but at least they have to be good enough. Gao Tianwu was a little dumbfounded for a moment, as if a huge pie suddenly fell from the sky and hit him on the head. Zhang Yi has always been very generous to the people around him and will not treat anyone unfairly. But the little things that slipped through his fingers were too much for Gao Tianwu now. He pounded his chest with excitement and said loudly, Boss Zhang, you value me. I will never forget this kindness. I will never embarrass you when I go to Xinjing. Zhang Yi smiled faintly. I don't want to see what you say. I want to see what you do. The journey is long, and you have to consider everything yourself. I only look at the results. If you don't do well, I will find someone to replace you. Gao Tianwu nodded. I understand. He clenched his fist tightly, feeling that the overwhelming wealth was right in front of him. He also knew that leaving the comfort zone would encounter a lot of trouble. He and his men were not strong enough, and they were going to work in the most powerful region, and they would definitely be despised or even difficult. But he had to grit his teeth and endure all these. As long as he could get through it, he would be considered to be a success. By then, he would have a better future than the leaders of the 3 major bases who were eating and waiting to die in Tianhai City. After all, Zhang Yi's attitude towards the 3 major bases was very general, just letting them fend for themselves and not interfering too much. But the Yuan mine, that was Zhang Yi's property that he valued very much. If he does well, he will be a frontier official. How can Zhang Yi support him less in the future? Gao Tianwu was filled with joy and excitedly left with the things Zhang Yi gave him. He only had 1 day to organize the team. The next day, he would set off for Blizzard City and then follow the people there to the Valley of No Retreat. Gao Tianwu left. He was going to the north and stay in that colder valley for a long time. Zhang Yi watched him leave the shelter. He walked a long way in the ice and snow, leaving a long string of footprints on the ground. But he stopped at a certain distance, turned around, and bowed deeply to Zhang Yi, who was watching him from the window. Zhang Yi smiled faintly. He leaned against the window and stretched out his hand to the coffee table more than 10 meters away. A cup of coffee on the coffee table suddenly flew towards him, swaying, and it was still unstable when it fell into Zhang Yi's hands, and the coffee was about to spill. Zhang Yi took a sip of coffee and said lightly, although I can actively collect objects, my control seems to be a little poor. Moreover, I can't actively absorb human bodies, which is very strange. The increase in the supernatural power index, means that the degree of ability is increased. His ability to collect in the different space has become stronger and wider, and he has the ability to actively plunder and absorb. After some experiments, he can now even uproot the entire shelter from the ground and absorb it into his own different space. However, there is still a limitation: it is ineffective for people. Zhang Yi has experimented with many kinds of objects. Ordinary living things, dead things, and microorganisms can be actively collected. But there are two exceptions. One is a living organism with supernatural powers. The other is human beings. They seem to have some special power in them, which competes with Zhang Yi's space, making Zhang Yi unable to absorb as he wishes. Zhang Yi drank coffee and took out a book from the different space with his other hand. It was a material book about the snowy plateau. Recently, Paji Geseng has contacted Zhang Yi twice. Both times he asked Zhang Yi to go to the snowy region to participate in the Quanzhou Dharma Assembly next year. In order to impress Zhang Yi, he also sent Zhang Yi some photos and videos. Zhang Yi saw the towering snow-capped mountain, which suddenly burst into brilliant blue-gold Buddha light on a dim afternoon, like a golden wool covering the top of the mountain. Zhang Yi did not tell Paji Geseng whether he would go or not, but just kept asking Paji Geseng to go. Jigseng. He was thinking about how much he could gain from this trip. But obviously, the changes in Qingdao reminded him that it was no longer safe to stay in Tianhai City. He must work hard to become stronger and find out the origins of those powerful and mysterious underground creatures. There were some movements from the East China Sea. Even from a long distance, Zhang Yi could detect it. Zhang Yi knew very well that it was the people from the East China Sea region or other large forces who took action. They must have gone deep into the fog and had conflicts with unknown creatures. But all this has nothing to do with Zhang Yi. He will not put himself in danger. And now he has more important things to do. In a blink of an eye, 2 months have passed. February 2053 of the planetary calendar. More than 2 years have passed since the end of the world began. In the shelter, Lu Karen has been busy with 2 things: perfecting her exoskeleton armor and building a centipede breeding farm. The centipede breeding farm was built next to the shelter. It was a huge cave she dug out 200 meters underground with the help of Uncle Yu and Fatty Sue. After all, this creature lives underground and has certain requirements for the temperature of the living environment. Although it is not such a fragile thing, in order to ensure the smooth construction of the breeding farm, these hard-won and possibly the only remaining centipede eggs must be bred with high quality. In addition, reinforced concrete and a part of metal are needed to build a cage to prevent this thing from escaping after it grows up. Now Lu Karen's ability index is as high as 9,500 points, and her ability to refine materials has been greatly improved. So she can produce a large amount of metal, and this part of the material problem is not a problem at all. Chapter 1240, Exoskeleton Armor. As for the construction of the breeding farm, Zhou Ke naturally helped guide the biological aspects. As underground mutants, centipedes can survive in the difficult environment after the end of the world. They have extremely strong vitality, so there is no need to worry about them not being able to hatch. However, after hatching, we need to consider how to wear away their wildness and make them become livestock that simply provide the essence for the aliens. Zhou Ke gave constructive guidance. Start screening after they hatch. Those that are too aggressive can be killed directly, leaving only those with docile temperaments. The food supply needs to be sufficient, the living environment needs to be comfortable, and fighting between each other must be severely punished. If this goes on for a long time, they will lose their fighting nature. Even if their origin continues to grow stronger, they will lose the ability to fight. Lu Qian held his chin and said uncertainly, "After all, they are alien beasts, and their animal nature is difficult to tame. If they explode one day, it will be difficult to control. I will continue to reinforce this farm to avoid accidents." Zhou Ke said with a smile, "Don't worry, I still have a way to deal with this problem. You just need to inject them with drugs, starting from the egg stage, to make their limbs lose strength, including adding a lot of hormones to the food they feed on a daily basis. That's insurance. Anyway, all we need is their origin. It doesn't matter what happens to other parts. Lu Qian glanced at Zhou Kuo, who was smiling and wearing a white coat next to him, and suddenly shuddered. Sister Zhou, why do I suddenly find you so scary? Zhou Kuo raised her head and moved her eyes from the notebook where she was recording the experiment to the ceiling. Really? But doctors and butchers are quite similar. This is known to anyone who has seen surgical operations. Lu Kuo smiled and said, anyway, I am only responsible for building the breeding farm. As for the later breeding, I will leave it to you, Uncle Yu and Brother Su. At this time, Uncle Yu and Fatty Su were wearing a full set of protective clothing and testing the status of centipede eggs in the breeding farm. Zhou Kuo and Lu Kuo were responsible for the technical work, and as for the physical work, of course it had to be left to them. The centipede breeding plan went on like this. For Zhang Yi, what he was most looking forward to was the mecha project that Lu Kuo had been thinking about for nearly 2 years, and it finally ushered in a major breakthrough. On this day, Lu Kuo called Zhang Yi to her laboratory mysteriously. Today, there are more than a dozen underground laboratories prepared for Lu Kuo. After all, there is no need for any warehouse here, so the space is very large. Lu Qian took Zhang Yi and opened a tightly closed alloy door. Brother, I have been studying mechas for so long, and finally created the most perfect work. I believe you will like it. Before opening the door, Lu Qian looked at Zhang Yi confidently and said proudly, mechas, this kind of thing has always existed in science fiction movies. But for nearly a century, the military of various countries have conducted research and secretly applied it to militarization. However, due to various problems such as cost, technology, and function, mechas have never officially appeared in front of the world. To date, most of the technical problems have actually been solved by Lu Qian. The only problem is to solve the problem of energy. The cost-effectiveness of large mechas is extremely low, and it is even worse than building an armored vehicle with the same material. However, exoskeletons have a different meaning in the era of aliens. It can be attached to the surface of the human body and become part of human combat power. Whether it is defense, attack, or the combat auxiliary system carried by itself, it is of great benefit to aliens. Zhang Yi looked at the slowly open laboratory. In the center of the laboratory, a black full-body armor stood quietly on the workbench, like a silent beast waiting to be awakened by its master. The black appearance and streamlined shape are full of extreme beauty. The matte appearance has no reflection, which is somewhat simple, but it is extremely conducive to combat. Even the tactical eyepiece of the helmet can't see a trace of reflection. When Zhang Yi saw it for the first time, he thought, black. Wouldn't it be too obvious? Lu Kuo said quickly, it has a chameleon system that can be optically invisible according to the surrounding environment. And you can also control its color independently. Zhang Yi nodded with satisfaction. He came to the side of the armor and looked at it carefully. It turned out that you can't tell what its performance is just by looking at the appearance. It looks good, and the appearance gives people a thin feeling, not as bulky as imagined. Lu Kuo was next to it, carefully introducing its performance to Zhang Yi. I named this mecha Chenlong, which is the second-generation mecha I developed. Uncle Yu had tested the first-generation mecha before, and its overall performance was already quite sound. And I have greatly enhanced its performance on its basis. First of all, in terms of weight, due to the emergence of yuan matter, the weight of carrying compressed fuel has been reduced. And after my ability has been improved, the performance of E-metal has also been improved. So the weight of this exoskeleton mecha is only 15 kilograms. 15 kilograms may have been a bit difficult for Zhang Yi in the past. But now, on the one hand, First, he is diligent in exercising. Secondly, his body has been enhanced by Zhou Kuo's physical transformation, so he can bear all these weights without any pressure. Zhang Yi stared at the mecha carefully. Under Lu Kuo's control, it kept changing colors, showing its optical stealth performance. I can carry a maximum of 50 kilograms of weight on my body when I am fighting normally, without affecting my own actions. So, you can add another 15 kilograms of weapons and other tools on it. Don't exceed 30 kilograms at most. Lu Kuo nodded. As for weapons, it is not a big problem for you, brother. You can put the weapons in the different space. But for emergency, I still added a high-energy compression cannon on my wrist. In order to reduce weight, this is the only weapon, but the attack power is absolutely trustworthy. It is not weaker than your Thunderbolt. So next, I will add other tools to the armor, such as medicine and spare food. Zhang Yi nodded. Very good. He stretched out his hand. Then, what about the defensive performance? Zhang Yi didn't care much about the offensive performance. It was impossible to expect that a mecha would give him the ability to fight against an Epsilon-class enhanced mutant. Therefore, it was most reliable to enhance his defense. Chapter 1245 Testing Armor. Lu Kuoran certainly understood what Zhang Yi cared about. She smiled. Don't worry about this. She blinked at Zhang Yi. I have carefully polished this mecha for half a year. The whole body is made of E-metal and materials similar to E-metal. In terms of defense, it can withstand the direct attack of Tomahawk missiles without being destroyed. And the liner is redesigned according to the performance of the military's black battlesuit. Even if it withstands an explosive impact, it can dissipate most of the impact force. According to my estimation, its overall defense is roughly equivalent to that of a strengthening mutant with an ability index of about 9,500 points. Zhang Yi's eyes suddenly lit up. That's great. This greatly enhanced his survivability. Lu Kuoran continued, and I also considered its flexibility. Brother, look at this. She picked up the computer in her hand and entered a series of commands. The next moment, Zhang Yi saw that the Chenlong Armor in front of him was like a carp, with countless scales all over its body, opening and closing very smoothly, like rippling water. A closer look revealed that the surface of the armor was not made in one piece. Instead, it was a whole set of armor made up of many scale-like armors. Is this chainmail? Zhang Yi immediately saw the original form of this inspired design. Lu Qian shook his head. Not entirely. Some areas are connected in an integral way, but most areas, especially the joints, are made of fish scale-like armor. In this way, it can ensure that when you wear the armor, it will be like wearing a set of clothes, and there will be no discomfort in movement. In addition, since the energy problem has been solved, there is a hidden jet tail at the back, which can achieve ultra-high-speed flight in a short period of time. Lu Qian scratched his head and said a little embarrassedly, considering my brother's ability, I have greatly reduced the weight of the mecha. A lot of weapons and equipment have been reduced, and even the flight mode can only last for half an hour at most. Brother, you should be able to accept this, right? Zhang Yi nodded with satisfaction at this time. This is exactly the kind of armor he wanted. It can even be said that this set of armor is the most valuable only to him, and it is completely customized. Even if it falls into the hands of others, it is probably just a tortoiseshell with a single combat attribute and mainly for defense. However, Zhang Yi's main feature is long-range attack. The mecha he needs has high defense, high mobility, and high flexibility. Zhang Yi took a deep breath, his eyes flickering with joy. He said to Lu Kuoran, How can I have any opinions? I am simply satisfied and couldn't be more satisfied. Kuoran, I like your exoskeleton armor so much. The weapons are lightweight because Zhang Yi's space is not short of weapons, so there is no need to pile them up and increase the weight. The high-speed flight time is short because Zhang Yi has the ability to fly, and this function is only used for emergency. And if it really needs to fly for a long time, Zhang Yi only needs to refuel, which is not a problem at all. At this time, Zhang Yi is already a little impatient. Has this mecha been tested manually? Lu Kuoran nodded. I have tested it thousands of times, and there are no safety hazards. Lu Kuoran understands Zhang Yi, and he doesn't like to be a guinea pig. Zhang Yi nodded. It was not that he did not trust Lu Qian's skills, but that he was used to it. Lu Qian handed over the control of the mecha to Zhang Yi. Zhang Yi took off his outer clothes, wearing only a black battlesuit lining, and then walked in front of the mecha. The fish-scale armor immediately opened a hole, allowing Zhang Yi to put it on like a jumpsuit. After putting on the armor, Zhang Yi felt very strange, just like wearing a slightly heavy sportswear, without feeling depressed and heavy. The human exoskeleton armor itself is built according to Zhang Yi's human body structure. As long as it does not lose energy, it will save Zhang Yi a lot of physical strength. Wearing it, only a small amount of force is needed to allow people to carry very heavy things. Zhang Yi glanced around through the tactical eyepiece, and soon he adapted to it all. I want to go out and try the power of this armor. Zhang Yi rubbed his hands, stepped excitedly, and moved like riding the wind, with fast steps. He and Lu Qian left the underground laboratory and came outside. It was not surprising for his family to see this scene. They had known about the development of this kind of armor for a long time. It was just the first time I saw Zhang Yi wearing it. Yang Xia put down the knife in her hand and smiled in surprise. It seems that Zhang Yi's armor has been completed. This must be a very powerful thing. Zhou Haimei smiled beside her. Yes, everyone knows that in Kuo Rant's heart, her brother Zhang Yi is the most important. The two smiled at each other, but still quickly took off their aprons, put on thick clothes, and followed him out. Zhang Yi left the shelter and immediately began to try the basic functions of this armor. Potential. The armor has many abilities, and the complex ones require memorizing the instructions for several days and nights. However, most of the functions are only auxiliary functions, and their presence or absence will not affect normal use. Therefore, Zhang Yi only tested its most important abilities. First, it is flying. Zhang Yi has made sufficient safety preparations. Tracing all things can allow him to escape the moment he senses that the armor is out of control. Therefore, there is no need to worry about anything. He pulled the speed to the maximum in one breath and rushed into the sky. Two blue flames followed behind him, and the speed of flight was faster than the latest fighter planes today. The speed of flying is really cool. Strictly speaking, Zhang Yi has never experienced the feeling of high-speed flight. He has always been directly traveling through space. So this time, he can really feel the pleasure of the wind forming a terrifying sonic boom behind him. Everyone in the shelter watched him from afar, only to see Zhang Yi rushing up and down in the air, doing multiple tests without rules. The ability to fly, Chenlong did not disappoint Zhang Yi. It was indeed perfect. And the energy supply problem can be solved by simply replacing the Yuan energy block. As for the intelligent combat system, it is not much different from the intelligent system of the combat suit. Lu Karen is a mechanic, and the military is still more advanced in terms of intelligent systems. The one Zhang Yi used was designed by Yang Xinxin himself. It was an independent version after being revised from the military combat system. So there is basically no need to worry that the intelligent system of this armor will be invaded by others. The weapon system, like the Thunder and White Owl used by Zhang Yi, is a top-level energy storage weapon, and there is no need to say more. In terms of defense, it is made of the latest E-metal throughout, and is also trustworthy. What surprised Zhang Yi the most was its flexibility. There is no sense of heaviness when driving a mecha at all, no wonder it is called an exoskeleton mecha. Zhang Yi took out the horizontal sword and performed the sword technique, and the horizontal sword broke through the air with a rustling sound. Elbows, shoulders, knees, ankles, hips, each position is stretched freely, ensuring that close combat is not affected. This mecha can only be described in 2 words: perfect. Chapter 1246: The Power of Technology. Zhang Yi tested the Chenlong Armor, and the results were very satisfactory to him. With the help of the exoskeleton, his strength and speed can be further improved when fighting in close combat. According to Zhang Yi's own estimation, the help of this set of armor can at least increase his ability index by 500 points. This may not seem much, but it is extremely important because it greatly enhances Zhang Yi's survivability and becomes a backup magic weapon for Zhang Yi. For example, if he fights with others and both of them are exhausted and on the verge of running out of energy, this set of armor can give him the combat power of a captain for a short time. It is very useful at critical moments, and it is equivalent to a super-enhanced combat uniform on weekdays. It is simply perfect. Zhang Yi passed over the Lujiang River with the Holy Judgment in his hand. He waved his right hand forward. Without using any superpowers, he directly cut a half-meter deep and hundreds of meters long gully on the ice surface with the power of the mecha and the sharpness of the Holy Judgment. Very good. Zhang Yi landed on the bank of the Lujiang River, looking at his new equipment with great satisfaction, and nodded with a smile.
Quack.
The frog pushed a big hole out of the ice, crawled out, blinked its big round eyes, and looked at Zhang Yi. It was sleeping well, but was suddenly woken up, and it was very confused. Zhang Yi heard the cry and looked back at it, then opened the mask. Sorry, I woke you up, didn't I? The frog saw that the man was Zhang Yi and jumped over excitedly. Looking at the mecha on Zhang Yi, stars appeared in his eyes, and he rubbed his hands excitedly.
Wow.
It's a mecha, it's really cool. After all, the frog was also a human before, and there is almost no man in the world who can resist the charm of mecha and excavator. Seeing the frog, Zhang Yi smiled and said, "You slept for a long time again this time." The frog patted his snow-white belly. Sleeping is such a beautiful thing. The frog, like 3 things in my life most: catching insects, sleeping, and sharing wonderful music with friends. When Zhang Yi heard this, an idea suddenly came to his mind. Frog, you like to eat bugs so much. What do you think if I let you raise bugs? The frog's ability seems to have a special restraint on bugs. Although this ability seems to be very weak for high-level bugs, if it is cultivated and becomes the manager of the centipede breeding farm, it should be twice the result with half the effort. The frog's eyes lit up. Are there enough bugs? Zhang Yi's eyes twitched. Enough? Those centipede eggs are all laid by the mother insect after swallowing a large amount of yuan-shi ore. The shells are all colorful, and the centipedes born are also the strongest batch. If the frog is allowed to eat, it seems that it can't eat much. When that thing grows up, it will weigh at least several thousand kilograms, and the protein content is many times that of beef. This is possible,
Zhang Yi said.
The frog jumped on the spot excitedly. Quack. That's really great. Zhang Yi took the frog back, and his family hurried over to ask Zhang Yi if his new armor is useful. Zhang Yi gave a thumbs up. It couldn't be better. I am very satisfied with this mecha. He brought the frog over and said to Zhou Kur, the frog will help you manage the farm in the future. He whispered to Zhou Kur, if we leave one day, someone at home will have to help us look after the insects, to avoid any trouble. If they were not there, these terrible centipedes might cause a terrible disaster in the Jiangnan region. Zhang Yi must be extremely careful. Zhou Kur nodded in understanding and smiled. With the help of the frog, farm management will be much easier in the future. She waved to the frog, took it to the farm, and explained to it the knowledge of raising centipedes. Zhang Yi came to Lu Kur, who looked eager. Lu Kur's eyes were sparkling. She was extremely excited that her hard work could be recognized by Zhang Yi. That was the greatest pride of a technician. Kur, thank you very much for your help all the time, Zhang Yi said very sincerely. Lu Karen's face flushed, and he clenched his fists. Sweat oozed from his palms because he was too excited. This armor can only play the greatest effect when worn by you, brother. From now on, when you travel anywhere in the world, someone will see my masterpiece. This is my greatest gain. So, brother, I should thank you for giving me this opportunity. Zhang Yi smiled slightly. We have achieved each other, right? Lu Karen nodded. Zhang Yi glanced at the side. Uncle Yu and Fatty Su were not far away, staring at the perfect exoskeleton armor on him, and the light in their eyes was more exciting than seeing a top beauty. Uncle Yu saw a powerful weapon that increased combat power. Fatty Su saw a giant Gundam figurine. Zhang Yi said to Lu Karen, "Can this kind of armor be mass-produced?" Lu Karen knew that Zhang Yi would have this question. She replied, "Give me enough materials and time. I can replicate another set in a month. However, this set of armor is tailor-made for you, brother, and it is not suitable for others to wear. For example, the armor made for Uncle Yu. The weapon must be the most important because Uncle Yu's attack method is single and lacks long-range output ability. And the one made for Fatty Su, forget it, just match the weapons casually or enhance the load-bearing capacity and the ability to escape. After all, when Fatty Su fights, he can run far away and release skills to control the field." Zhang Yi touched his nose. That's right. There is no point in mass production. After all, each alien has different abilities. Besides, Lu Karen also needs a lot of energy and supernatural powers to make armor. If there is a way, let's make a set for everyone. You don't need 2 strong abilities. As I said, the main thing is to save your life and escape. Lu Karen nodded and smiled. I have thought about this a long time ago. When building the Chenlong, there were more than a dozen experimental machines. Although the performance was not as good as the Chenlong, it was still good for self-defense. I'll modify them, and then let everyone use them. Zhang Yi looked at Lu Karen curiously. What about you? Lu Karen put his hands behind his back, smiled mysteriously, and shook his head. I'll just be casual. Zhang Yi's eyes suddenly became suspicious. Is it some super secret weapons? Lu Karen pushed him. You'll know later. But I can't show you mine for the time being, because it's not finished. And mine. Only I can control it. Dear viewers, this series ends here, and we are starting new season. Thanks for staying tuned. Please subscribe if not already.